and welcome to our final session of the 12th International Disability Law Summer School. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our plans for this session. First, I'm going to speak about my own thoughts and reflections on what we've learned over the last 5 weeks and what we're going to take away from this event. Then I'm going to introduce you to Rosemary Caius, the chair of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, who has recorded a presentation for us giving her feedback and reflections on the document we co-created with guidance for states on how to implement Article 30 in practice. After that, I'm going to introduce you to Roisin, who is going to talk about the Craftivism project and what has been developed through that in the last 5 weeks. And then we're going to hand over to Maria, my co-pilot for summer school, who is going to facilitate a question and answer session with you guys, where you can share all of your experiences, talk about what you've enjoyed most from summer school, think about what you'd like to see in the future as well, and what the big lessons that you're taking away from this experience are. So that is the overview of what we're going to do in this session. I would just like to say that for today, if you feel comfortable to do so, it would be great for people to keep their cameras on if they wish. At some point in the proceedings, it would be nice towards the end if we could take a screenshot with everyone waving. We would normally in an in-person summer school take a big group photo at some point. So this is the closest we can get to that experience and we'd like to replicate it. Throughout the session, as usual, please press the raise hand button if you have any questions or need clarification. You have access now to the interpreters and to the captioning. So if you have any challenges accessing those, please drop us a message in the chat to let us know. And in general, we would ask people, again, where it's accessible to you, please raise your hand and ask your question with your mic on and camera on, ideally. But of course, you can also type into the chat if that's more accessible or suitable for you. Okay, so I'm going to get started with my part of today's proceedings. And to begin with, I wanted to talk about all the things I needed to be convinced of before the summer school actually happened this year. And there were quite a few. So one thing I was worried about before we ran this event was, is it appropriate for us to focus on culture at a time when disabled people are literally dying? And there's lots of causes of that, of course. There's the, widespread mismanagement of a global pandemic. There's people dying at the hands of law enforcement and police violence. There's people dying because of ableist assumptions within medical care, because of institutionalization. And maybe those things are happening every year, but it feels particularly stark this year in a lot of different ways. And I wondered if it was appropriate to focus on something that could be perceived as light and fluffy, which culture sometimes is. But I was convinced by various colleagues and friends that actually, no, culture is deeply interwoven into all of these structures that we are identifying as problematic. So we can't really call for change without thinking about culture. So it is appropriate to focus on this as a topic for summer school. And I'm glad that I was convinced and that we stuck to our guns on that. I was also very nervous about an online format. This is the first time we've ever done it this way. I didn't know if it would be meaningful, if it would be accessible to people. I was particularly worried about doing craftivism as a remote project because when we've done this in person, we had a physical room where there were materials available, where you could pick things up and start crafting them while you were listening to speakers. And I wondered, would people engage with it when we were all in our own homes? And I've been really pleasantly surprised to see how much people have actually really engaged with it. And it's been wonderful to see that. And then there were more trivial things like did we really need a panel on sport? As a fundamentally unsporty person, I'm particularly glad that Maria convinced me of that one, because I think we learned such amazing insights from all the panelists on that topic. So in short, I'm really glad I was convinced that we should do the summer school in this format, on this topic, in this way, because look at what you've all co-created as participants in summer school this year. You've thought about things, you've talked about your ideas, you've read the views of other people, listened to what they have to say, crafted things, danced it out, laughed, cried, maybe that's just me, found new connections, I hope, made new friends, got inspired, taking things away that you are going to do differently after participating in this event. I'm certainly going to do that, and I hope you are too. So when I was thinking about my reflections for today, I thought about them in sort of two main categories. One was on the really practical, logistical event organization side, and the other was more, I suppose, deeper reflections, kind of theoretical or almost spiritual maybe. So on the practical side, my main takeaway comes from something that really struck a chord in me when Jess Thom said it in week 3. She said, we need to reduce the labor that disabled people have to do when it comes to accessing creativity, because creativity transforms lives. And I'm still thinking about that. She also said that, she was still learning about her own access requirements, and that she was learning from other disabled people what was possible. And she said that sometimes people only know what their needs are by having them well met. And I thought that was so interesting to hear as well, because I've certainly made that assumption that everyone knows their access needs and can just tell me what they are, and then I can, provide them as an event organizer. I can meet them if they just tell me what they are. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that people might not know what their needs are. So taking from what Jess said, and also from what Pádraig said in the sessions this week, the need to really reflect on why we're offering certain kinds of access and check in to see if it's working for the people it's intended for. So what I'm taking away from those collective reflections is that going forward in all future events, we can be even more explicit about the kind of access we offer. So not just things like interpreting or captioning, but the kind of practical support that people talked about, which those of you who have been to previous summer schools probably remember that, having someone guide you through the physical space, but also tell you what's for lunch and help you choose what you would like out of what's available, and all of those practical supports that we put in place. We've never been really explicit that we do that, but we do it, and we can now be more explicit about it. But we're constantly learning, and we're constantly open to changing things and to feedback. So I hope you do take the opportunity to fill out the feedback forms that you will be sent as a follow-up to summer school, but also don't limit yourself to that. Please do get in contact with us and tell us what worked and didn't work from this session, because as I said, it's the first time we've done it and we really want to learn how we can do it better. So moving from the practical to the more theoretical, I want to highlight a couple of my favorite moments or key things that speakers said that really struck me and that really stayed with me. And some of them I missed the first time around, and I had to listen again to the session to remember what exactly it was that the person had said, or find something new in what they've said. So I'd encourage all of you to keep listening, listen back more than once to what people have shared in the different sessions. I'm going to start again with Jess Thom. I've been such a fan of Jess for so long, but every time she speaks, I learn something new. And one of the things that I missed the first time she said it, and only heard it again the second time I listened back, was about what she talked about with work, why it was so important for Tourette's Hero to work in the way that they do, particularly with children and young people. And uh, this I remember was highlighted by Cleena, one of our CDLP team as well, in her tweeting about the session, where she focused on this quote, and it really struck me when I re-listened to it. That Jess talks about the protective qualities of positive memories for children and young people, for disabled children and young people. And she talked about why Tourette's Hero organize these big creative events in public spaces. And she said they want to offer radical welcome to disabled children and young people, and that she thinks that will help build their capacity to resist, and that they'll be able to identify when they experience barriers, then that it doesn't have to be like that, because they'll have had the experience of when the access worked and was meaningful. And I thought that was such a really interesting idea and justification for working with children and young people. I hung on TL Lewis's every word in that session, and TL explained so clearly to me the ways in which the oppression that disabled people, Black people, Indigenous people around the world experience, and how interconnected these things are. So when TL talked about the framing of madness or disability and how deeply ingrained that is in anti-Blackness, anti-Indigeneity, and then TL rather, talked about how detrimental it is to struggles for liberation when we experience lateral ableism. So when people say, I'm not disabled, I'm just insert disability, and how challenging that is, because TL explains that that's detrimental to struggles for liberation as a collective disabled community. TL also explains how, for many people, the language of disability is the language of colonization, and there needs to be a different language. And so TL explains that for a lot of Black and Brown and Indigenous people, experiences of violence are so endemic and so everyday, this trauma, that then people don't need to name disability as part of that experience. So there is a need for a space to talk about how marginalized groups describe their lived experience without that kind of colonial language that may be associated with disability. And I thought that was really profound as well. It was something I hadn't thought about in that way before.
These are really weird. I feel like I'm gonna fall down.
And then something that Shivangi said in her session about the concept of crip time, which is a concept that Alison Kafer explains in her book, Feminist Queer Crip. And Kafer says that crip time is flex time, not just expanded, but exploded, that it requires reimagining our notions of what can and should happen in time, or recognizing how expectations of how long things take are based on very particular minds or bodies. And rather than bend disabled bodies and minds to meet the clock, crip time bends the clock to meet disabled bodies and minds. And that idea of bending the clock was something that I thought about a lot and used in the piece I prepared for the craftivism. So that was really meaningful to me as well. The final two speakers I want to highlight, and again, there's something every speaker said that was amazing. So these were just the ones that came to me this morning when I was trying to, prepare for what I would say today. And the final two are Irish women writers who we invited and who presented really powerfully, Louise Nealon and Nita Dolan. And I remember being struck by Louise again expressing this frustration at how people approach her when she speaks about and writes about an experience of psychosocial disability, or experience of mental ill health, or her experience of mental health services. And she said, if I am on one more podcast or radio show and people call me brave for speaking about my own experiences of life, I will actually scream. I want there to be a world in which I can come on and talk about my own lived experiences and say, I was a bit sad for a while, and for people to be like, oh, great, I was sad too. And for people not to be uncomfortable around sadness. And I thought about how important that is, that we sit with our discomfort when people tell us what their experiences are like, and that we don't do something I sometimes talk about with colleagues and friends, like the head tilt of, that's so sad, how sad for you, that we actually just take people where they're at. And if they're describing an experience as something that, we might expect to be traumatizing, but they don't experience as traumatizing, then we don't impose those assumptions on them. And I thought that was really important. And finally, the thing that Nisha said that most stuck with me was about representation. So she was talking about the fuss that's made about her as a disabled writer, and yet how nobody asks, do you have a disabled editor? Do you have a disabled agent? Are you interviewed by other disabled people? Because the answer to that, as Nisha said, is no. And Nisha said that that means the visibility of disabled people is tarnished because whose stories are chosen is determined by people outside the community. And she also said that it makes her far more cautious about how she discusses her identity as a disabled person than, you know, in an interview or in a radio show or a podcast, than if she would discuss it if she thought she were in good hands. So she talked about feeling like walking on eggshells with an interviewer once they get into that terrain, because she has no idea how they'll write it up. And that somebody reading that interview, you know, has no idea what did Nisha actually say and what was inferred to what she said by the interviewer. So one of the things that really struck me from all of these conversations is, especially for people that I've heard interviewed a lot before, you know, by, let's say, mainstream media. So people like Sinead, like Rosaline, like Nisha, Louise, like Padraig, like Adam, like Jess, people you hear a lot, or a lot more in media maybe than others, on TV shows, in radio, in podcasts. And I thought they spoke so differently, or the conversation was so different at summer school to what I've ever heard them say in any of those other forums. And why is that? I think it's because there's something really powerful about this space. And that's, I hope it is, because that's what we've always wanted to do with summer school, is to create a space where people can feel freer to be themselves, to find the people who are like us or like-minded, and have a different kind of conversation, to change the narrative, or in the words of Sinead's consultancy, to tilt the lens and focus on what we think actually matters and not what mainstream or non-disability spaces think is important. And as always, in thinking about this, my thoughts come back to stories every single time, because that's the thing I care about the most in life, is stories. So when I think about what I've learned from summer school, I think about who gets to tell the story of disabled people, where is it safe for people to tell those stories, and when is it safe for them to do that, and who are those stories told for, and who are they told to? Are they told for other disabled people? Are they told for the ableds? Who are they told for and to? And how are they told? And all the different means of storytelling, in word, in song, spoken stories, written stories, images, sounds. And what happens next? What happens after the stories have been told? And what do we want to happen after the stories have been told? So those are the things that I'm going to be thinking about more and more after these discussions. So those are my deep thoughts about summer school. And I'm going to move now to a little bit more practical and administrative stuff before I introduce you to Rosemary. So first of all, before I forget, I want to make sure I've thanked everyone who brought this event about. And I would encourage you to show your appreciation for them as well. So first of all, the interpreters that we have had throughout the 5 weeks from Overseas Interpreting, Romy, Elsa, Bridget, Natasha, Rasak, and Christian. Thank you so much to all of you. And I also want to thank our captioners. So we have had captioners from My Clear Text. We have had Katie, Elaine, Patricia, Carrie, Randy, Chris, Andrew, Heather, and Kim. So thank you so much to all of you, and to Cormac and Blue and everyone at Staunton Media for producing seamlessly these events. You have our eternal gratitude. And then I want to move on to the Galway team, the Centre for Disability Law and Policy team, the staff and students at the centre who put in a huge amount of work to make this happen. Cliona, Keelan, Jenny, Anya, Janos, April, Mary, Ellen, and everyone else who listened to us complain about summer school and came up with good solutions when we were thinking through problems. But a special above and beyond award to Joe and Sharon for doing incredible work to pull together people, especially for all those pre-recorded panels. You have no idea how long it took people to commit to dates and times across different time zones to do this. It was a real Trojan effort. And especially to my co-pilot Maria, because really this was your brainchild and you made something really spectacular, and I'm just in awe of what you've created in this event. So the practical stuff, we will keep the Discord server for summer school open for the next 2 weeks, but after that we will be closing it. So please download what you need now from it. We will also make a page with the resources that people shared in terms of reports and, you know, links that people shared on the Discord. We'll make a page with that, a document with that information that will live on the centre's webpage under the previous summer schools tab. But again, if there are people you want to message through the Discord to ask them to share contact information with you, you can do that up until 2 weeks' time when we will close the server. Again, if you want to get in touch with anyone else from summer school, like our speakers, you can let us know, get in touch with the summer school via our email, and we can always pass your email on to a speaker and ask them if they're happy to get in touch with you. You'll get your certificates of attendance in the next 2 weeks, probably about that length of time it will take us just to process everything. They will be issued with the name you used to register, and they will be sent to the email address that you used to register as well. A final reminder in terms of what you can still watch back. There are 2 sessions that we only have permission to air during summer school, and then they have to be taken down. So that is the comedy session with Abnormally Funny People and the storytelling session that was chaired by Anna Arstein Kerslake. Those are only going to stay available until Monday, so they won't be available then after that any longer. So if you haven't watched those or watched them back, this is your chance to do that. All the other sessions will remain available, but again, we would ask you not to share the links. We will be making them publicly available later in the summer. And we have not decided when or on what topic the summer school will be next year, or indeed exactly what the format will be. We would hope to be in person in the next summer school, but we would also hope to keep an online option in some way for people who would like that into the future, because if we've done it this year, we really have no excuse not to do it again. And if you are desperate for more CDLP interaction, we have organised a free public webinar which will have international sign language interpretation and captioning on Free Brittany and the right to legal capacity for next week, for Wednesday the 7th at 2 p.m. Irish time. So if you're really missing us and you want to come back, you'll see us again there. You do have to register to attend on Eventbrite, and you can find the links on our Facebook and Twitter page. And if you're interested in even more deep learning about the topics we've discussed throughout the last 5 weeks and other areas of disability rights as well, I would encourage you to think about our master's program. So we have an LLM in International and Comparative Disability Law and Policy, and it is running online again for the next academic year. So being in a different part of the world is no barrier to taking up that program next year, and it's not too late to apply if you're interested. Please contact us and let us know. So I think that is all the admin until somebody reminds me of what I have forgotten. But I want to now introduce you to Rosemary before we play her recorded video. And so I want to tell you a little bit about who Rosemary is. Many of you who have been to summer schools in the past will know and recognise Rosemary. She's now the chair of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And Rosemary is an Australian disability activist and law professor. She's a leader, a troublemaker, a reformer, a pragmatist, a diplomat when she has to be, and she's one of my very favourite dinner companions, and she's particularly cross not to be in Galway to go for our annual dinner in various parts of the city this year. But I'm sure we will welcome her back in person to future summer school events. So I'm going to ask Cormac to play Rosemary's video where she responds now to what we co-produced as the guidance for states on Article 30.
The school this year. Hi, thanks to Eleanor and the team for inviting me to participate in the summer school this year. Being part of the faculty at the summer school has been one of my favourite academic opportunities over the past 10 years. Today I have some overarching comments about your commentary that I'd like to share with you, and some particular points that you might like to take on board before you finalise your document. Overall, this is a pretty good document. I will note that it was an ambitious task to do Article 30, mainly because Article 30 has several components and one disconnect with its legal antecedents. If this was a process that was happening within the CRPD committee, it would have been a process that would have taken about 2 years, maybe 3, before final adoption. The process would have included the establishment of a working group of the CRPD committee, and this working group would have been supported by the Secretariat of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the OHCHR. There would be a review of jurisprudence, not only from the CRPD committee, but also of all treaty bodies. The work would have been guided by an agreed concept note that would scope the parameters of the general comment. As a member of the committee, I would have encouraged my colleagues to consider breaking down the article into various areas within the scope of the concept note before embarking on the task of developing a general comment. I think the focus of the general comment would be more manageable if it was just focused on either sport or culture. But that debate would have been held within the committee before any decision was taken to establish a working group to research and develop the core components of a general comment. General comments are generally in response to issues that keep arising through state reports or through individual communications. The committee may notice that there is a repetition in some issues that states aren't quite grasping in terms of the recognition, protection and fulfilment of certain aspects of a right. So some general comments only deal with a limited aspect of an article, whereas other general comments may cover the whole article and its standards and its relationship with other human rights and fundamental freedoms. So given the large task that you were given, the overall approach is pretty sound. I'd like to point out a couple of issues about language. Firstly, my pet hate is that you should never, ever refer to people as acronyms. Persons with disability, not PWD. Inanimate objects and legal entities, fine, go ahead, refer to them as acronyms, but not people. There is no right or wrong about the language people use to identify themselves or use within their advocacy work. People first language, such as people with disability, people with disabilities, persons with disabilities, is only one way that people express their identity in relation to the social model of disability. It is important to note that different people with disability and different countries use different social model approaches that are equally valid. It's important to recognise the variations in social model approaches. For example, Disabled People's Organisations Australia explain these variations. The social model of disability recognises that disability is the result of the interaction between people with impairments and barriers that prevent full participation in society on an equal basis with others. In Australia, the social model terminology for individuals is person with disability or people with disability. This is also called person first language. It acknowledges the person first before it acknowledges the disability. Person first language is viewed as emphasising the value and worth of the individual by recognising them as a person instead of reducing them to their disability. In other countries such as the United Kingdom, the social model terminology is disabled people. This is also called identity first language. It acknowledges disability as an important aspect of a person's identity. Identity first language is viewed as recognising that disability is part of a person's identity, not an added extra. Disability cannot be separated from who you are as a person. For example, autistic people use identity first language in recognition of the embodied and valued reality of impairment. There is a growing movement of people with disability in Australia and internationally that prefer identity first language. And there is also increasing use of terminology that reframes impairment as part of human diversity, such as the term neurodiverse and the antonym neurotypical. The committee, through its jurisprudence, has adopted people first language. While the committee has established preferred terminology for the UN, which is legitimate and consistent with the title of the convention, it is not necessarily consistent with all social model of disability terminology, nor the way many people with disability choose to self-identify. The UN terminology is important for policy purposes and consistency. However, this shouldn't establish a hierarchy of social model terminology. The committee does not have the power to mandate any particular use of language. The CRPD uses the term person. The term person is consistent with the legal use of person as opposed to peoples. And this use keeps the distinction between individual and collective rights. The CRPD conveys individual rights, and so it relates to persons as opposed to collective rights, which are accorded to peoples. The use of language should always be considered context specific, but should not denigrate people with disability. The important thing when writing is consistency. For a general comment of the committee, it would use person first language such as persons with disabilities and organisations of persons with disabilities consistently. Another area that I would like to outline relates to the disconnect between Article 30 in CRPD and its legal antecedents. This is another area that the CRPD committee would have had to discuss and come to some agreement. The legal antecedents of Article 30 are found in Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Article 15 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Article 27 of the UDHR states that everyone has the right to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. This has been further elaborated in Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which requires recognition of the right of everyone to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its applications. Although the CRPD doesn't directly incorporate the language of Articles 27 and 15 of these human rights instruments, the equivalent article in the CRPD is Article 30, Participation in Cultural Life, Recreation, Leisure and Sport. This article does not include reference to scientific progress, and this is an anomaly of the CRPD drafting process. The final text of the CRPD is a reflection of the socio-political landscape in 2006, with the emergence of the Human Genome Project, which presented complex and difficult bioethical debates for people with disability. But this omission does not mean that the CRPD in some way limits the right of people with disability to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress. The preamble of the CRPD makes clear that everyone is entitled to all human rights and fundamental freedoms without discrimination of any kind. And the purpose of the CRPD is to promote, protect and to ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities. The CRPD recognises the right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress through its significant focus on technology as a facilitator of the realisation of all other CRPD rights, such as the right to live independently and be included in the community, the right to freedom of expression and opinion and access to information, the right to employment, education and health, and equality before the law. People with disability have a right to the benefits of technology and other scientific advances. In terms of the structure of the general comment, there needs to be a clear introduction to what its purpose is. General comments are about clarifying the normative content of human rights obligations. As I've noted, that may be article-based or it may be issue-based. So it needs to be framed in terms of that clarification, such as the aim of this general comment is to, and then the aim needs to be clearly set out. It should tease out its legal antecedents through not only the International Bill of Human Rights, the UDHR, ICCPR and ICESCA, but also through the thematic instruments. General comments need to establish the legal standards that are to be applied by states. So, on an equal basis with others, what does that mean in terms of the legal standards? What are its legal antecedents and how is it being applied? This also goes for other standards such as non-discrimination. If the state party has to fulfil an obligation without discrimination, what does that mean? What standards need to be met? What does it mean in terms of the standard of obligation? Is it progressive realisation or is it immediate realisation? What does that mean for the overall function of the article and the state obligation? General comments also need to be accurate in terms of who holds the obligation, but also cognizant of how that particular obligation could be operationalised. For example, if third-party actors will be responsible for implementing things such as captioning, then the normative framework needs to ensure that the obligation on states is something that they can actually do to facilitate the action by third-party actors. For example, the general comment could suggest practical measures that states could take to fulfil their obligations, such as by funding research and development for automated captioning, or enacting laws to mandate captioning on the public broadcaster. Telling states to provide captioning is not enough, and it is generally outside the states party's purview. Finally, it's important not to focus on diagnostic groups. The CRPD is not based on diagnostic groups. The human rights model is about adopting the human rights approach, and the human rights approach ensures that all persons with disabilities, regardless of diagnosis, degree or severity, and the requirement for support, have their human rights respected, protected, and fulfilled. It is not the diagnosis that is the trigger for protection of rights. It is the barrier to the exercise of rights that is the trigger for the protection of rights under the Convention. Identifying barriers on the basis of diagnostic groups has the potential to exclude others who experience similar barriers and need responses by states to be able to exercise their rights. For example, the lack of access to printed materials, such as access to physical books, is not only for people with vision impairment, but can be experienced by people with mobility impairments. Access to complex information is not only an issue for people with intellectual disability, but also impacts on people with cognitive impairments, which covers a range of diagnostic groups. I've really enjoyed reading your work, and once again, I've been really surprised and impressed with the contributions from students at the summer school. I know it's not the same as travelling to Ireland, but I hope you found your summer school experience enjoyable and productive. And I hope the online format has made it more accessible for those who would not normally be able to travel to Ireland. Well done, and I wish you all the very best.
Great. So there you have it, folks. Rosemary has given us more food for thought on, especially I value her very technical lawyerly brain on distinguishing exactly how we outline state obligations and understand how these kinds of documents can be written and what exactly they can focus on to really make clear what states need to do differently. And I hope that Rosemary will return to the information that you guys have created if the UN committee ever does decide to develop a general comment on Article 30, which I think would be wonderful development to see. Okay, so now I'm going to hand you over to Roisin Power Hackett to talk about the Craftivism project and her experience of putting together everyone's contributions and to share with us what has been created from that. So over to you, Roisin.
Hello, thank you, Ellen. So just to give you a description of myself, I am a 31-year-old woman with blonde hair that's quite sort of longish, and I've blue eyes, and I'm white, and I'm sitting in front of a window and a wall, and you can see the garden outside, and it's kind of sunny. So it's great to be talking here. Thank you so much to the summer school for letting me be the Craftivism coordinator. something that I've participated in before actually, but didn't really look into it properly before I took on this role. So I'm a visual artist, a writer and a curator. So I organize art exhibitions and I work in Ireland and I work on a variety of different projects. And I've just finished a scholarship in curating where I studied and researched access and inclusion in the arts for people with disabilities or disabled people. So this is really, it was great timing. It was really helped me like continue on learning, because I think, you know, once you can never stop learning. And all those stories, as that you were all saying, like, you know, the different stories that people tell are really important to learn from, because although I have a disability, I have a disability and it's my perspective. So everyone has so many different kinds of disabilities, so you can always learn. So I'm just gonna, I think I have 20 minutes, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna need that, but I'm just gonna briefly talk about craftivism. And I might try, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to, but I might share a couple of images. One of them is a collage of the event, of the summer school, all the summer school work. But is this sharing? Yeah, I'll try and make it big. I haven't showed a presentation in a while. So this here is when I was looking through the history of craftivism and researching it, this was one of the first kind of, I'm sure craftivism has existed for as long as protesting and people wanting their human rights has existed, which is, you know, a long time. But this was the first kind of conscious idea that maybe textiles and using your hands and using your creativity could help with could be a form of activism and a form of politics, and that makes a statement. It was made in 1977 by Sally Jo Bowman, I think in the States. It was very famous, and she actually crocheted or embroidered this thing originally, and it says Ladies Sewing Circle and Terrorist Society. And here, for just to image describe it, it says that in kind of old style writing, I suppose, an old style font in a circle, and it has then a circle around it in the form of curves and a flower in the middle. It kind of reminds you of, the flower kind of reminds you of old style sort of embroidery. And also the writing reminds you of old style, traditional, conservative sort of ideas about like what women used to do, kind of embroidering and sewing away. But it kind of subverts this idea because of what it says, Ladies Sewing Circle and Terrorist Society. So there's a quote from, I listened to a talk by somebody who wrote a book about it. She wrote a book called Frey, Art and Textile Politics. And the writer was Julia Bryan Wilson. And I'm just going to read out the quote. This piece of work was actually printed on a lot of T-shirts in the 1970s. And she's talking about when it was made into T-shirts. The T-shirt embodies a tension within textiles. They occupy a central place within traditionalist histories, whilst they also erupt as potential sites of resistance to that which the very traditionalism claims competing factions, at once as hegemonic and counter-hegemonic. So yeah, this hegemonic and counter-hegemonic idea. And I think, you know, art can do that. That's especially kind of visual art. It can look pretty and beautiful and colorful, but can be quite challenging, you know, to the status quo. And I think that that's what everybody did here, I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So here I have, I hope people can see it all, but here I have a collage of all of the works that people sent in. Thank you so much for sending it in. And I think you can see here that all of this looks really colorful and amazing and is kind of incredible sort of work, but it's really, really it challenges ideas about disability and you know, how disabled people should expect an awful lot more than we often get. And there's a lot of images of drawings and of three-dimensional objects and photographs, and then a lot of collages of words that I'm going to talk about. And the words are really, you know, they really help me kind of create a list, I suppose, of different things that I was kind of, as these were coming in to me and I was putting them up on the website, you know, that these are all the different things that culture, leisure and sport kind of encapsulates, and how important Article 30 is. I kind of knew it was important because I've been pretty much an artist since I've been 2 years of age and have never wanted another kind of career. But I'm not that sporty either, but I actually love sea swimming, which has become popular recently with COVID-19 in Ireland. And there's one person who, I think it's Anya Sperrin, yeah, it's up the top there. She did, or they did a painting of a beach and the sea, and it's really important that people with disabilities get to go to the beach and get to go swimming if they can, and get into water, because I think it's such an amazing thing. And then also I also love to go sailing, and I know sailing is becoming more accessible to people, and I have a physical disability, but it's quite mild, so I don't really use any adaptations, but I often need help, and I often can only use boats with one sail if I'm on my own. And I kind of describe myself as having 1.5 hands. So I often use my teeth to pull the ropes. And a lot of people find this really strange, but I've just gotten, it's like the thing where you're like sharing advice as a disabled person. If you can always use your teeth and your mouth to do things. So here's a few different things I've noticed from the different words and the different topics brought up in these drawings. So we have sports and sea swimming, and then of course Free Brittany, which is a really relevant thing at the moment, and as you say, there's going to be an event next week talking about it. And then I can see Braille, and then the Irish language, which is quite interesting because I don't know in other countries, but I know that the Irish language in Ireland is treated as something you don't need to do if you have certain disabilities. If you have a physical disability, you can do it, but if you have other disabilities, they often tell you, oh, it doesn't matter. You get kind of like this free pass of not having to learn it at all if your family chooses to. So I think that that's important. We should all be learning the Irish language if we're in Ireland. If everyone else gets to learn it, we should learn it too. You know, there shouldn't be, people should not be discouraged. And also if there's other kind of minority languages in other countries around the world, disabled people should have the right to learn that minority language. And then, because language is a power, as somebody wrote actually in one of the posters. And then there's Crip Time, which Eleanor did her piece on, and that's something I've got to learn more and more about over my time my scholarship and over my time doing this summer school. Like I knew about it, but I hadn't really thought too much about it before. I think it affects everybody with a disability. And then music, of course, it's right there. And there's the inclusion for children. This really lovely drawing at the end, which shows children playing, and there's a park and a cinema, and it's super dynamic, and there's a lot of movement in it, which is great. And And then here we have, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Here we have somebody cooking, making food, and that is part of culture. I hadn't really thought about it until that person sent that in, but it definitely is. And then what I kind of did up here in the corner here was about promoting the participation and encouraging participation in the arts, and how that's really, really important for people, because I think participation is something that, you know, all disabled people need to be able to participate in culture and society in general. And then that culture helps with community and identity, and that our identity as people is formed by culture. And if we're excluded from that, well, that's difficult. And then like another one that I really loved was Indy Snora's crocheted dolls in the center here. And then just the top here, Maria's I Am What I Am, which is really like, it's like disability pride, and accepting who we are and accepting kind of disability as an identity, and not worrying too much about trying to call ourselves something different or calling ourselves just by our disability. We need to kind of band together and call ourselves disabled or having a disability, because then we can actually, you know, politically join forces and change things. You know, because if we're divided into loads of different smaller groups, it's more difficult. So that's what I noted about all of these. And I also, yeah, of course, I said Braille. I don't know very much about Braille, but it's great to see. And then, of course, Galway being mentioned is great. And then the fact that people put so much effort into some of these, and I particularly this drawing here is like, must have taken a while. And of course, Indy's, all of these must have taken the whole length of summer school to make. So thank you to everybody who put these together. And I don't know where I am time-wise, but it would be really great if anybody who's made any of these wants to come and talk about them in a minute. But first, there's just one more thing I want to share. I want to show the website, if that's okay, to just show it, so that I'll stop sharing here and then share the other thing. I'm not sure if I can.
We've put a link to it in the chat, so hopefully everyone
Okay.
can see it there.
Well, I'll just try. Oh yeah, sorry, because I was actually checking. I was wondering what this is. I was checking the comment when I was listening to Rosemary there. So actually, sorry. Just so everyone will be able to, if anyone is here listening, they'll be able to see that their work is up online. And there's audio, there's image descriptions and captions in this. Yeah, so that's really it. So if anybody is really interested in talking about their piece, who's in the chat, that would be great. Is there anybody? You can.
Hi.
Hi. Who is that?
Gabriel? What's it?
April?
Hello, do you see me?
No,
You.
we can hear you, yeah.
You can hear me, but you can see me.
Yeah.
Let me try to connect via my phone, because I wanted to show my artwork
Okay.
and how
yeah.
I've done it. Yes, let me just connect quick via my phone.
So we need to take a comfort break in a moment. So
Yeah.
now might be a good time to do that, to give Gabriel the opportunity to reconnect. Is that okay with everyone? We'll take 10 minutes and then we'll see you back here at 10 past.
Okay.
Okay.
Important. I was slightly skeptical on it. And then, like a true neurodivergent woman, I came back and eventually suggested 5 weeks as the correct response. But there's a couple of things that have kind of really struck out for me. One is specifically disability culture, which is when we have our own spaces, when we have our own places to be ourselves, cross impairment, impairment specific, whatever it is, the freedom that that brings. And particularly even from the offset with Sinead and Rosaline talking, I felt very grateful for the disability community in which I exist, in which I live, and that disability family and that chance to exist in that space with our own ideas and traditions and humor and comedy. And while I tend not to get emotional at summer school, I ended up crying through the first session as I was so grateful for that, and how empowering and equalizing it is when we can have those communities. And I felt very grateful for the DPO I'm part of as well, Disabled Women Ireland, and that I have that space. But the summer school has also raised many questions for me about what access to culture really means, because while a lot of people do dismiss it as something that's, I don't know, less serious, less important, more fanciful, culture touches every area of our lives. It allows us to communicate and experience and rationalize and process things in ways we hadn't previously, or in ways we might struggle to if we're using our more rational brain. It shapes who we are. It facilitates our ideas and experiences of community. As Roisin was going through the craftivism pieces, she brought up the Irish language and how it's often seen as an addition for young people with disabilities, or that it's not necessarily an essential subject. I was a young person with a disability in an Irish school. I'm now an old person with a disability. And even though I went to an Irish school in a protected Irish speaking area, my disability was questioned because I was continuing on Irish in my education. And I think if we are to live as multidimensional people, in this world, accessing all of our cultural rights and experiences and sports and recreation and the nights out are just so very, very important. It's been a real, for me, the best thing about summer school is getting to talk to disability rights activists from all over the world and get to share ideas and have conversations or arguments, or, well, maybe heated discussions rather than arguments, and to really engage with that. And my biggest thank you and my biggest reflection is to all of the delegates who, through the groups, through questions, through everything, meant that even though we didn't get to gather in Galway, we were able to have that experience, that chance to share and meet new people and learn and grow and figure out how we were going to fight the good fight. So with that in mind, what we really want to spend this last half hour of summer school doing is to hear from all of you, to hear what stuck out, what you've learned, what you'll bring forward with you, what you'd like to learn in the future. So I'm gonna, if you want to raise your hand or like wave at the screen, if you can't use the raise hand button, if you have a comment or a question or an idea, do share it, because as always, learning from the other delegates is always the highlight, and we want to make sure that we just spend our last half hour together doing that. Bonus points for whoever puts up their hand first. Ishita,
Yeah, can I say something?
of course.
Yeah, actually, I'm impressed by the way you have sketched out the whole program, because whatever we have discussed, I think you have kept on Wednesday or Friday some of the live examples. People with disability, they were discussing those particular points in details, and that I liked very much because you know I work for persons with psychosocial disability and ID, and so I always have the, I would say, I always felt the need to learn about the laws, the human rights issues, because unless we know the human rights issues, it is very difficult to empower them. So I think I have enjoyed the whole program, and it was really interesting. And maybe, of course, this is not the end. Maybe we were not getting opportunity to interact with other participants, which I would like, or I would suggest if you can include it in any of the next programs, where only the participants can spend some time and discuss regarding certain issues, not only about this, about what we have learned, but about ourselves, so that we can actually get enriched by others' experiences. So this part, I think I was missing, because if you go somewhere to learn something, you can interact directly with others. And here we were always very focused on, okay, CRPD 30, okay, Article 12, Article 13. So I think that part I missed. And maybe in the coming 2 weeks, which you were saying that 2 weeks, the website would be there if we can interact. And for me, of course, there were lots of problems because I was not aware of some of the technical issues. So I was not able to use many of the things. So maybe I have disturbed you, maybe quite often. So I'm sorry for that, but it was really an interesting experience overall. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashita. I think what we all missed the most were coffee breaks where we could chat informally, and the pub. And we hope that it'll be that if we're in person next year, there will be plenty of both. And again, I will say we're keeping the Discord open for the next 2 weeks. So share your details. Again, I think, I know in our working group for group 4, we all have each other's emails because we all spent 4 weeks emailing each other far too much. Apologies again. So do, even if we can't all be in the same place, there's still a chance to kind of share and learn and grow, even if it's not quite what we would have initially imagined. Noella, your hand's up. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I wanted to just share my insights about this session. To me, it has been very good experience to engage with different people with these good ideas, good views about the article which we were discussing in our group. And it has helped me to understand more about Article 30. I think I was reading it and maybe have my own understanding about it. But when we were discussing about it together, it has helped me to dig deeper and understand more about it. It is more than what I used to understand. So it was really good experience. And I came to realize some articles you need to you can't talk about Article 30 without talking about Article 9. So it has helped me to understand more about these articles. Thank you.
And I think that's one of the wonderful things, is that it's very clear that we have this amazing opportunity to really dive into one article in depth, but also recognizing that none of them stand alone. And we do have to kind of, when looking at one, we have to keep the rest of them in mind. Peadar, I see you, your hand up as well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, yeah, I thought it was a great experience. There was a lot I didn't think, I never really thought about Article 30 before the summer school. I was vaguely aware of its existence, but I didn't actually think it was, yeah, I'm ashamed to say I didn't really think it was important, or at least as important as other articles. I did, in my head, I didn't really connect anything. I didn't connect it together with the other articles, and now retroactively I feel foolish because I can see that they connect very strongly, actually. Yes, I thought it was a really good experience, and I thought the panelists were really good. I kind of fell behind, to be honest, with the pre-recorded sessions on Mondays. I still need to catch up with some of them, but from the live sessions that I attended on Wednesdays, they were really good. Yeah, I mean, I do regret that I didn't have more time to do as much as I would have liked, but that's not criticism of the summer school. That's just I was overly optimistic when I thought I could fit all the fish into my into what else I was doing. But yeah, it was still a really good experience despite that. And I was already thinking about applying for the masters for 2022, but this has definitely motivated me to continue with that ambition. So yeah, thank you. It was a very good experience.
Be looking forward to having you on the LLM. I think we were all over ambitious in what we thought we could fit into the month of June. So you're not alone there, and fair play to everyone for managing to keep up with like a fairly demanding program by the time you counted everything in, generally, while also being expected to continue on with your day-to-day. I will say, apart from the 2 pre-records that are coming down, you will be able to listen back to all of the sessions if you've missed anything. And we were, the big reason for that was recognizing that there was a level of a level of flexibility required if we were to actually really manage this. And it also means if you manage to make it all the live sessions and already listen to the pre-records, you'll be able to listen back to them again too, because they are very they're just so interesting, and we're so blessed with speakers and questions and engagement. Paul, your hand's up there.
Thank you very much. I'd like first of all to say that you can hear me?
Yeah.
I was saying that this was a great lesson for me, because I've been one of the activists and also using art as a method for demanding some rights. And in one way or the other, it has inspired me to think of how I can get back to school again and do maybe a master's of law or PhD in terms of understanding issues of mostly persons with who are having multiple disabilities. Maybe you are blind and you are facing psychosocial issues, how they can be handled, and how art can contribute in terms of helping persons' abilities to understand that they can also demand their rights. So it has been an eye-opener. And also listening to the facilitators, especially the pre-recorded discussions. I wish we had a platform for asking direct questions to see how they have handled some of those challenges they have undergone. Because when you look on what we've been learning, is that it is like as persons with abilities, maybe from the global south, we have been facing these challenges, but we've not been knowing who to ask for support or who to mentor us in terms of doing some of these practical issues. And also it increased my knowledge in terms of understanding other arts other than being myself doing music and also sometimes poems, but I also got to explore other areas during this like comedy, like storytelling, etc. So it is a great opportunity, and I wish that we can continue networking and get to learn more. Thank you.
And I think one of the things that I quite like about summer school is it's often about sort of inspiring you to do other things in the future and bring that knowledge forward. And again, I will say the Discord, we've 2 weeks left of the Discord, but also if, and some of the pre-recorded speakers are in the Discord and in the chat, and some, I think a couple of them are here today as well. So if you have specific questions, do bring them up there, and we have just kind of 2 weeks left of that. Candace, your hand's up.
Thanks, Maria. This is Candace Cable. I'm a Caucasian woman with silver and brown hair. I have black glasses on and a red shirt. I'm in my house, well, really my apartment in downtown Los Angeles. And I wanted to thank everyone, you know, everyone that created this space and everyone that participated in this space, because it's a lot of bravery to create something like this in a way that you never thought it could happen. And I really liked, in one of the collages was uncharted territory is one of the statements, because it really is. And I have always been a huge fan of Article 30 because I am a Paralympian and was one for 27 years. And I use a wheelchair for mobility. So my sports were winter and summer, skiing, cross country and alpine, and wheelchair racing. And I always knew my sport and used it throughout my time as an athlete in advocacy to really shift the perspective. And sport is such a friendly face, and that then shifts the culture a little bit around the harder, more uncomfortable topics that disability seems to bring forward to everyone. So I really appreciate the opportunity to hear all these different perspectives. And it was so fun to see some of my colleagues actually on the panels that I work with. And then also people that I'm a fangirl of, and to be able to hear more and more perspectives from everyone around the world. I'm like everyone, I wish we had more time. It was just really awesome. And I'm one of those people that probably wouldn't be able to come to Ireland for this summer school in the physical sense, at least this year, because of other circumstances. So I'm really appreciative of being a part of this. I truly do believe that we need to redefine the word and own the word disability to be able to represent a community and really create a real culture, because we're such a young movement. We've only really been out since the mid 20th century. I mean, before that, we were either eradicated or institutionalized. So, you know, just a short story, my first Paralympic Games was 1980. And they were starting to have the Paralympic Games, the Olympic Games, same cities, same venues, same countries. And that year it was in Moscow for the Olympic Games. And the Soviets said they didn't have any disabled people, so they wouldn't hold the Paralympic Games. So we really have come such a far way in such a short time, but we still have so much stigma and bias and myths to break down. And I'm so appreciative to all the people on here that are working in that area. So I send much love, and I hope I get to see and meet people in person one day. Thank you so much.
That was incredible. And again, we've no disabled people here is something we've heard more than once in a variety of different settings, and it's never been true. Emer, do you want to come in? And if any of the people in the chat as well, we can get to you. Emer?
Hi, I just want to say I really enjoyed the summer school. I've never actually been to one in person, so it was great to actually participate in one. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to learn about Article 30 because I've never really looked into it. And I'm glad I've got the opportunity to look into because it is very, very important article. So it was lovely meeting everyone, and I hope to go again next year.
Thanks, Emer. I think it's been a great way to get the people like myself who did not know enough about Article 30 and people like Candace who are long-term Article 30 enthusiasts all together in one Zoom room has been really, really important. And I think we've all learned something from that. Sarah, do you want to come in?
Hi. I really want to thank you all of the Galway team to organize this event, even in this format. And I think it's amazing how technology can help people around the world to make them connected and do something that would be very useful, not just because you learn something new, especially if you are into the disability world, but just maybe get to know more each other in hoping that we can help each other more and make contacts of interesting kind of type. I'm actually almost very nearly graduated, so I hope that one day I will work in this kind of disabled sector. So hoping to work for accessibility and laws, especially in my country, which is Italy. And well, I hope to stay in contact with you and all the participants of the disability school. And I just want to thank you for all your work and hope to continue on this journey together. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, we hope that all of those connections give you all a chance to work together either online or in person, and either soon or in the future. Nick, do you want to come in?
Sure. I'd just like to add my voice to the thank yous. I've really enjoyed the practical side of working out. It's been, I think that's been, I'm sorry to all the people who've held wonderful lectures and all that stuff, but the best side was actually working with the article with a great group of people. So thank you to them, and I really enjoyed it, and I think that it would be a really, really great idea to repeat this next year, Article 30 again, but physically for as many people who can get to Galway as possible. I just feel that we started something and that we need to complete it. Thank you. That's me.
Thanks, Nick. And I think, yeah, more stuff on, I think we are all a lot more aware of the importance of Article 30, and hopefully it won't be the last time the centre gets to give it its dues and focus on it. And as well, one of the things I'm so grateful for is people's participation around the guidance on Article 30 and what was a really monstrous task. Like you would not wish it on your worst enemy in a lot of respects. And I think Rosaleen reminded us just how much normally goes into producing these documents. And there was a lot of discussion around it, particularly early on when we were going, you know, will we, could we do this? Would it be a valid replacement for Moot? And what we did decide was that summer school participants were definitely nerdy enough to enjoy it. And I feel very proven correct on that. Paul, do you want to come in again? And Nick, you've your hand up again as well, or?
Yes, I would like to ask a question.
Yeah. In
regards to the master's scholarship, the master's course.
Mm-hmm.
In case, because you find that most of us that we might be interested to apply or get on board onto that scholarship or the education part of it, so that we can grow the career or even get to know what we can improve in terms of disability rights. Are there internal scholarships and are there opportunities for such? And also you find that sometimes some of us who are older, we've been disadvantaged by the system you find that there are age limit. Are there age limit in terms of applications?
There is no age limit in terms of applications. There is, I'm actually not sure about scholarships. I know that there are scholarships. I'm not sure which are, it's a mystery to me, but if you, the OSF Disability Rights Scholarship Programme is running this year, I think. As like one option, but do look around. And if you look on the university website, there's also various different scholarships that are kind of more open to LLMs as well. I will say I'm a graduate of the LLM program. The LLM is, it was one of the most amazing learning experiences I've ever had. And like, it's amazing to, you know, my colleagues from the LLM are still dear friends, but also it's amazing to, it's amazing to get a chance to spend a year on the CRPD and disability rights when it's something that we all hold so dear, and to have classmates who are just as passionate on it as you are, and some really fantastic lecturers who are now mostly my colleagues. So I would have to say nice things about them, but they are really wonderful. Irish Aid also offers some scholarship programs, and we should say you don't have to have a background in law. And we have some incredible disability activists who've done the LLM, and it's been a great, and you know, we've all really loved it. So if you have, Eleanor's put the info@cdlp email into the chat. So if you have any questions about the LLM, I would recommend doing it to anyone. It was one of the best things I ever did. I learned so much more than I did in my undergraduate degree. So yeah, do. Noella, Paul, Samantha, I will go, and that's the order you're on my screen.
Yes, I really wanted to thank you guys, to thank the team. Myself, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying I would really, I felt like it's not okay for me to not say anything, to thank you guys for, but also as a person who has got scholarship, it has been a very great chance for me, and I really appreciate for consideration. I'm glad I've been in this one, and I hope for future also I'll get into more summer school like this one, because it has helped me as a person who is working on the field to advocate for children, for the rights of children with disabilities and without disabilities. This has helped, it's helping us to understand more about what is going on. And considering my background as a teacher, so some of the things is not like I'm very clear with them. So I really appreciate for the consideration to get scholarship in this, and I'm so glad. And I don't know what to say. I just say thank you.
And thank you for being here. And you're right, it's so important that everyone starts to move to that rights framework and understand that rights framework. And we were so delighted that Irish Aid and a number of other groups were able to ensure that we were able to make the scholarship more open, or to make the summer school more open through scholarships. And it was so important to us that we retained that. Samantha, your hand is up.
Sorry, just working technology out.
All good.
Yeah, hello from Australia. Just wanted to say, yes, it's been a challenge doing the virtual meetings because of the time frame. So it's like 1 o'clock here almost. So it's been really challenging, and I will definitely be there next year in person. But also, yeah, it's been so interesting, and learned so much. Love my group 4 team. fabulous team. Like, yeah, like such a group. It was really challenging. I actually, I was lucky enough to be involved with developing the convention. So I thought it would be sort of like, oh, this will be this will be okay. It'll be easy. And yet, Article 30 is a really difficult article in terms of, sorry, I've got a cold and we're in lockdown and it's COVID, but I'm negative. So Article 30 is a really difficult article in that it's been neglected, very much neglected, or overlooked for other articles. So yeah, it was a very interesting opportunity to look at that article, and also to excuse me, to also look beyond, like, we might work as advocates and we might work as, in the field as lawyers or advocates or whatever we are. But when you look at actually the value that the arts and sports bring to our lives, it's significant. And so, yeah, I just thought about, wow, I've never thought about the fact that I'm a figure skater. I won prizes in piano. I've been an artist, and like all these things are not valued as advocates. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, very interesting that we've that this article actually draws attention to that. So yeah, I've gained a lot from this session, and sorry, my voice is so bad. Yeah. So I don't know, I'm really crook still, so that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's also 1 a.m. in the morning. But yeah, just wanted to say that this has been great experience, drawing attention to that particular article and the importance that it definitely plays in people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. That wasn't cooked. I understood it all, and I will echo Candace's heart both at the importance of Article 30 and these I suppose activities, experiences, art, culture, recreation, leisure, sport in ourselves, and how important it is for our personhood. And I will also echo the love for Group 4, which was the group that Maggie and I got to help facilitate, who not only had to use the acronym PWD in order to get from 6,000 words to 1,000 words, also had to use the acronym CLRSA for Culture, Leisure, Recreation, Art and Sports, because we were a very talkative group. Derek Baguma, your hand's up, and we just have 4 minutes left. So do you want to come in?
Thank you so much, Maria, and the whole team. It's been really awesome that I've been part of this team in all the participations that we've carried out. For really, it's been a learning point and a new experience on my side, interacting with people from afar, coming out, all driving to try to see that the goal that we have set is accomplished. Really, it's been wonderful, not forgetting the stories that have been able to listen from different participants, and even other stories that have been shared by our mentors. So it clearly shows me that I'm not going to remain the same in terms of advocacy and in terms of advocates, in terms of speaking about persons' disabilities, their interests and all that. Why? Because I've been able to gain much more experience, and I believe that it's not going to stop here. I'm going to.
Derek, I'm afraid we're going to have to stop you there. You're breaking up on us there. We can't actually hear you.
I could only get bits of that with connection, but again, coming back to stories and the power of stories in terms of learning from each other. And Derek, your story in our...
I want
I'm not sure if we lost you altogether. In terms of, yes, just, sorry, technical. In terms of stories and the importance of stories, and obviously Derek, yours at on the second week storytelling night was lovely. And not to sound too much like Eleanor, but stories are one of the most powerful tools we can have in learning from each other. We just have 2 minutes left. Does anyone want to come in? I can see there's people coming in the chat. Does anyone want to raise their hand? I'm trying to get the comments in between all of the LLM chat. Sarwada, Moses, do you want to finish us off?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm particularly very happy for having participated in this summer training. I have got new insights about Article 30. I have explored the diversity that comes along with this article. As persons with disabilities, there are many issues that we need to give critical importance. Article 30 has a lot of things that need to be put into consideration. I have heard from real life experience of people with disabilities talking about issues that they actually think can work if everything is put into order. So I've also learned that we have a role to play as we are influencing the impact that we want to see. I've appreciated all the facilitators and the panelists that have taken time to share their views. Thank you very much. This is shaping our advocacy journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. We are now at 4 o'clock or 10 a.m. or midnight or 1 in the morning, depending on where you are. So I am going to close the session, but with a really, really heartfelt thank you. And I know I've said it already in the session. Summer School for me is about the delegates, and you've all been just so incredible and given, and I've just learned so much over the last 5 weeks. And I hope we get to all work together and that we can all continue to, I suppose, realise and promote the importance of Article 30. So with that, I'm just going to say one big thank you, and I hope that we all come across each other in a non-virtual setting soon. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.